when you think about it, the professional world is just this dense web of rules.
Oh,
Right?
absolutely.
Contracts, safety guidelines, building codes. It's all about compliance. But
Mm.
here's a question I've been thinking about. Are we following these rules just because the law says so?
Or is there something deeper?
Exactly. Is it because those rules actually come from a shared idea of what's right and what's wrong? Today, we're doing a deep dive into that very relationship, the bedrock connection between a society's moral principles and its legal systems.
Mm.
Our mission is to figure out not just what the law is, but, why it is.
And how that why shapes your responsibilities as a professional.
For sure. For experts like engineers, understanding this is, well, it's a difference between just following a checklist and actually protecting the public.
It really is. I mean, we're so often taught that law is this external thing, this set of constraints. But it's much more accurate to see laws as moral principles written down, codified.
Okay, so ethics is the goal and law is the rule book.
Sort of. Ethics sets the high bar, what we ought to do, based on ideas like fairness and justice and minimizing harm. The law then takes those big ideas and formalizes them. It turns them into the mandatory enforceable minimum, the baseline for everyone.
And that directly impacts your career. Because if you, the professional listening, only understand that legal minimum,
You're going to hit a wall.
you're going to fail the moment the legal guidance runs out.
Yeah.
Because your professional duty, so often, is to go beyond that minimum. And look, before we get any deeper, if you're charting your course for professional excellence, this is non-negotiable stuff. Especially if you're preparing for the National Professional Practice Examination. These insights are. They're foundational. So make sure you subscribe right now. You'll get all our detailed analysis and the focused knowledge that's just critical for your success and for passing that NPPE exam.
So let's start with that foundation, the why behind all the rules.
Okay.
When we talk about moral principles, what we really mean are those collective judgments a society agrees on over time. Things like honesty, fairness, respecting life, protecting people from harm.
And laws are just the tools to enforce those judgments.
Precisely. They are the mechanisms we create to make sure those expectations are met.
That seems pretty straightforward with, say, criminal law. A law against theft clearly reinforces the moral principle of respecting property.
Right.
But how does this scale up to the professional level? For an engineer, for example, the moral principle of protecting people from foreseeable injury isn't just a simple rule.
No, it's not codified as don't hurt anyone. It gets formalized into something much more specific, like the standard of care or due care.
And that's a huge distinction.
It's the crucial distinction. For an ordinary person, that moral principle just means being reasonably careful. But for a licensed engineer, due care is a legal obligation. It demands specific, documented technical competence and real foresight.
The law holds you to a higher standard.
It has to. Society grants you the exclusive right to use specialized knowledge that directly impacts public safety. The standard has to be higher.
But why do people follow these complex laws? Is it really just the fear of getting fined or, going to jail?
That's part of it, for sure. Enforcement helps. But the real power of a legal system is its legitimacy.
What do you mean by that?
People generally obey laws because they see them as morally justified. When a regulation requires an engineer to file an accountability report, they comply not just to avoid a penalty, but because they fundamentally agree that public safety is a shared moral commitment.
So if the rules felt arbitrary, people would stop following them.
Compliance would crumble. The whole system would fail if people didn't believe, on some level, that the rules were fair and just.
Okay, that makes sense for rules that are already on the books. But here's where it gets, really interesting. Let's talk about the lag. My sources suggest that ethics almost always develops before the law.
That's absolutely right.
We recognize that something is harmful first, and only much, much later does the law finally catch up and codify a rule against it.
The law is inherently slow. I mean, think about it. Technology moves at an exponential pace. Our legal and political systems, they move linearly.
And that gap, that lag, is a huge challenge.
It's a fundamental challenge for any profession dealing with rapid change. You see it everywhere. Laws against industrial pollution only really appeared after rivers were already poisoned.
And privacy laws are still scrambling to catch up to AI and data harvesting right now.
They're years behind.
But hold on, what about proactive laws? I mean, aren't there safety regulations that require certain features before a bridge is even built to prevent a failure? Isn't that the law leading instead of lagging?
That's a great point, and it's an important distinction to make. While a regulation might mandate, say, a specific level of seismic resistance,
Which is proactive.
It is, but the moral principle that led to that law was established long, long before. The ethical duty to make sure a building doesn't fall down in an earthquake existed the moment we started building in earthquake zones. The law just came later to formalize the best-known method for meeting that pre-existing ethical duty.
Ah, okay, so the ethical obligation to protect comes first. The legal rule detailing how to protect comes second.
Precisely. And this is the real danger zone for a professional.
Because,
Because in emerging fields, maybe using new composite materials in construction, there might not be a specific code written yet. The law is silent.
and you can't just hide behind that
It
silence.
can't. You have to use your ethical reasoning to see the risk, to anticipate the harm, even when there's no specific regulation telling you what to do.
So the law is really more of a defensive document. It defines the bare minimum of acceptable behavior, not a roadmap for excellence.
Exactly. The primary purpose of law is to create order, protect people, and support the common good. But the key thing for our discussion is that laws are minimum standards.
They're the floor, not the ceiling.
Perfectly put. They prevent the most obvious harms and help resolve conflicts. A law tells you the minimum amount of rebar to use, but it doesn't tell you the optimal, most ethical amount for long-term safety.
And those legal minimums are definitely not the same everywhere. Cultural values have a huge impact on laws. If I'm an engineer working somewhere that prioritizes rapid economic growth,
Their environmental regulations might be a lot less strict than a country focused on ecological stability.
right,
It's a reality you have to deal with when you work globally. Think about liability. A legal system that values individual autonomy might put more blame on the user if a product fails.
caveat emptor buyer beware.
Right. Whereas a more collective-focused culture might impose incredibly strict liability on the manufacturer or the engineer, and that fundamentally changes your design choices, your materials, your entire risk assessment.
Okay, so let's take that scenario. I get a permit in one country that's totally legal, allows for certain emissions, but I know for a fact those same emissions would violate the standard of care back home. What's my ethical duty? The local law or the higher commitment?
The professional consensus is pretty clear on this. Cultural differences in law do not cancel out your fundamental ethical responsibilities.
So you follow the local law.
You must adhere to local law to operate, yes. But you cannot ethically do something that grossly violates core moral principles like protecting human life or the environment just because it's locally legal. The law might allow it, but your professional judgment has to reject it if it causes unnecessary, foreseeable harm.
That brings us right to this idea of alignment versus divergence. When law and ethics line up like a strong building code that reinforces safety, it's easy.
It's straightforward. Compliance is ethical, and being ethical means you're compliant.
That's the baseline.
Yes, but the real ethical tightrope walk is in the zone of divergence. That's where legality and morality split apart.
Give me an example.
Okay. Imagine a project where the contract says to use the cheapest legally compliant material. It meets the absolute minimum safety threshold, but you know that a slightly more expensive option would dramatically improve the system's lifespan and its resilience under stress.
The law lets you use the cheap stuff. The client is demanding it. But ethically, you see a future risk.
Precisely. This is the classic dilemma. Legality does not automatically equal ethical acceptability. This is where the toughest professional decisions are made. When you're faced with a loophole or an outdated rule, you have to fall back on core principles.
Public safety first.
Public safety first, honesty, and avoiding harm. Your duty isn't to exploit the gap in the law, it's to close it with your responsible action.
This idea of an ethical veto is really powerful. It means a professional can and sometimes must say no to something that is technically legal but ethically dangerous.
It is the ultimate expression of that higher standard, and that's really the next question. Why does society demand more from an engineer than from, say, a shop owner?
It has to be about the burden of professional status, right? The public gives professions like engineering so much autonomy and trust because of the expertise involved.
And the potential for harm.
A catastrophic level of harm, structural failures, environmental disasters, data system collapses.
Absolutely. That status is a contract. Because you have that specialized knowledge, your obligations just have to go beyond the legal minimums. We're talking about being proactive.
So it's not enough to just react to problems.
You have to anticipate and mitigate risks before they even happen. And that means exercising independent professional judgment, even if it goes against what your boss or your client wants.
And I guess that includes having a duty to speak up. If I see a major safety concern, my job isn't done by just writing it down in a memo. I have to disclose it, maybe even become a whistleblower if it's serious enough.
That's right. The moral commitment to public safety has to override your loyalty to an employer. And it's not just about illegal things. Professional standards require you to avoid conflicts of interest, not just illegal bribery.
So owning stock in a company whose product I recommend might be legal.
It might be perfectly legal, but ethically, it destroys the objective judgment that your professional role requires.
That brings up a really interesting point about enforcement. Laws depend on someone watching a regulator, a court. But you can't audit every single engineering decision in real time.
The system would grind to a halt. It's impossible.
No.
So that's why trust is the absolute cornerstone of the profession. Engineering decisions are complex, technical, and often made on the spot. Real-time enforcement is a fantasy.
So society just has to rely on the engineer's internalized ethics?
We have to. We trust you to be the moral agent on that project, to act ethically even when no one is looking, because the stakes are just too high to do it any other way.
Which means that ethical framework can't be static. It has to evolve, right? It has to anticipate where the law is going next.
It does. Moral principles are always evolving. Just think about the huge shift in how society views sustainability and equity now compared to 20 years ago.
A massive change.
And that ethical shift is what's driving major legal reform. You're seeing new carbon reporting laws, new equity mandates.
So for the professional on the ground, if you understand the ethical reasoning behind these changes, you can see where the law is headed. You can get ahead of it.
Exactly. You don't wait for the new law to be passed. You start implementing the moral principle now. That's what it means to be responsible and future-proof.
And that brings us to the final, most critical piece. What do you do when the law is silent? How do you use your judgment in those gray areas?
You need a practical toolkit, a structured ethical test.
So when you're facing that real-time dilemma, what are the concrete questions you, the listener, should be asking yourself?
Okay, first, start with an impact analysis. What moral principles are actually at stake here? Is it about safety, fairness, integrity? Then map out the consequences.
Who could be affected by this decision?
Yes, who's affected, directly and indirectly, and not just tomorrow, but 5, 10 years down the line. Then you apply the scrutiny test.
The public scrutiny test, I like that.
Right. If your decision was on the front page of the news tomorrow, would the public feel you acted in their best interest?
Or did you just try to meet the bare legal minimum?
That is often the most powerful gut check you can have.
Yeah.
And finally, you have to ask, does this action align with what society expects from my profession? Not just the letter of the law, but the spirit of the trust that's been placed in you.
So when you ground your decisions in those principles, you're really operating at the highest level.
You are.
In the end, it sounds like the professional is a guardian. You're not just a subject of the law, you're an active participant in upholding the moral foundation that our entire legal system is built on.
Your ultimate responsibility isn't just to meet the letter of the law, it's to uphold its spirit. And by doing that, you contribute to safer, fairer, and more sustainable outcomes for everyone. That commitment, well, that's what defines a true professional. And if you want that foundational knowledge, the kind of detailed analysis you need to meet that high standard, the kind of essential deep dive that will help you be successful on the NPPE exam, make sure you subscribe. You don't want to miss another minute of this crucial analysis.